Welcome to another educational and inspiring AAM program designed to help you become a more effective and outspoken advocate for the animals. Tonight, we're excited for this reverse psychology outreach workshop with Michael Davis of the Victim's Perspective. My name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. AAM is a multinational program supporting new and fledgling activists to reach their full potential. Our mission is to empower and equip activists to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Additionally, we offer free educational online programs like this one. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events around the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or mentee or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. We'll put that in the chat. All right, let's get started because I'm going to introduce our presenter right now. Michael Davis is an influential animal rights activist known for his unique and effective advocacy approach utilizing reverse psychology. He shocks the public with his attention-grabbing sign, "Animals deserve to be abused." Michael is going to detail his pioneering, innovative 3-phase E.A.R framework for outreach, a 3-phase structure designed to enhance understanding, empathy, and reflection. All right, so please follow Michael's well-known YouTube channel, The Victim's Perspective. Michael will address your questions during our Q&A portion. Comments are welcome throughout, but please be kind and respectful and stay on topic if you would. Okay, so Michael, take it away. Gotta unmute. Yay.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining this live stream of this workshop. Again, I'm Michael Davis. I've been doing outreach for around like 3 years or so. And yeah, it all started when I was a chef at a restaurant. I started reading books about I started reading books on the topic of basically heuristics, logical fallacies, things like that. And from reading all of those books, I started listening to Joey Carbstrong quite a bit. And at the outset of it, because I was a chef, because I probably ate more animal products than anyone else, I was the last person I thought who would want to go vegan. And so coming from that perspective and seeing how Joey was handling these arguments with these people, I literally saw from a top-down view all of the logical fallacies and all those kind of things that the people would use. And like it was like clockwork. Joey would ask them a question and then the person would respond with a logical fallacy that I learned from my book. And so it got me thinking, okay, surely Joey's just talking to people on the street. They're not really that researched into the topic. So I looked at more and more of Earthling Ed, a great outreacher called Hudson Tarlow as well. So many different people. I probably spend more than hundreds of hours on YouTube outreach. And from all of that, I also started picking up patterns to what the people would say and also how they would respond to Joey's questions. And so what that started developing in me was first an understanding that, okay, there doesn't seem to be any logical flaw with the idea of going vegan, but somehow, even though there's all this logic to it, people can't seem to let go of their want for animal products, even though it's clearly logical that these people are against animal abuse. So again, it's running through my head. And I guess the thing is, before I even got to this point, I had been to a slaughterhouse and I had witnessed animals being killed right in front of me. And at that point in my life, it had absolutely no effect on me. At that point in my life, I closed my heart to it. And then I watched Dominion. And when I saw Dominion, it hit me in a way that was more real than actually being there and witnessing the things that I saw in that documentary. And so from that point, I had a fire in me. I was so upset, mostly at myself, that I had been paying for something that within my deepest values I was truly against, but again, my actions did not align to the values that I hold so deeply in my heart. And so I thought, I'm just going to go out on the street and show people what I found, and hopefully that will resonate with them. And I quickly learned that when I went out on the street, I just had a TV screen showing people the horrors that I saw within this footage. And I thought, if they see it, then they will understand. And I guess that was a limitation of my understanding of how people change their values, because I already witnessed firsthand what happens to animals from going to a slaughterhouse, but that didn't change me. And it didn't click until I saw Joey Carbstrong doing my style of reverse outreach. And so usually when we do outreach, we tell people what we want to say to them, and we try to relate to them based on how we changed. And what I try to do with this approach, and also how this feeds into the 3-step framework, is that we want to find the people who are, one, ready to change, and also we want to find the people who are very passionate about defending animals. So all of the techniques, my reverse psychology first and foremost, and then my 3-step framework of outreach itself, which applies to all outreach, not just reverse psychology. These two frameworks that I use are essentially just filters. So whenever I've taught this, and I've had people talk to me about, oh, if I use this, that means that I can use this on my family as well. I can use this on these other people. The reason why I get the success I do in my videos is because I'm filtering from a wider perspective of having a lot of people who can relate to the fact that animals don't deserve to be abused. And then I narrow that down into the people who say that, but also believe it. And the way that I get to that is by, again, using this 3-step framework that I'm going to teach you. So I guess this is a disclaimer that if you just kind of use these two frameworks and expect it to work for everything, that's exactly how you'll probably be disappointed with it. Because again, if we understand that these are filters and not just overall truths of how human behavior and how behavior change works, then you'll get, okay, I'm operating with a filter. So that means that I have to target broadly the right kind of people so that the best people fall into my filter. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what this is all about. So I want to go through, again, what I've done and kind of interact with you guys, see what you guys think about the whole reverse psychology thing, because I do find that people almost find it a bit too enticing. And again, they kind of get rose-tinted glasses on and think it's going to work for every different scenario. So I'll just go over these photos. This is my first time at an animal sanctuary. If you haven't been to an animal sanctuary before, you definitely have to go because it's an amazing experience. And this is my YouTube channel. So I would just post all of the videos that I had of conversations, and I started to flip my YouTube channel from just purely being, I want to show my outreach, to being, I want to show people how I get my outreach results, because I felt there was no dedicated YouTube channel that specifically taught outreach. showed examples and broke down exactly how and why I ask what I ask. So there's a lot of, I don't want to play down anyone who's sharing their outreach conversations, but usually they will tell you what to ask the other person in order to get the result. But I wanted to focus more on why I ask what I ask, so that if you don't use my specific question, it doesn't matter, because you understand the higher level thinking of what we're trying to achieve with each question we ask. And so literally going through that whole process of figuring out, why am I asking exactly what I'm asking? Why am I using this specific question or this specific wording in a question? Once I understood the reason behind those things, it allowed me to have more freedom within my conversations, but also it got me to figure out, okay, so this is why Joey Carbstrong asked things like this. Okay, this is why Earthling Ed asked this question when this happens. And so I think the biggest letdown in my own outreach was only thinking about what I'm going to say next and not actually listening to the other person. Because I feel in outreach, we think that we have to tell and tell and tell. At least that was my assumption at the start. But I found that the more that you listen, the more that you can cater your responses to the people who are ready. And by doing that, one, you establish a deeper connection with them, and that lets them trust you. And when you have their trust, then they will listen to you. So I guess it's kind of a reciprocal thing. So this is what I saw from Joey Carbstrong. And this was the first time after I'd done my reverse outreach that I saw it in a massive platform, because my views would only get probably like 600, 1,000, something like that, which is fine. But as soon as I saw Joey do it, the comment section was insane. And I think the best thing about it was that I saw that these were people who understood what good and bad outreach kind of is generally, but I guess they couldn't make out the higher level difference of what exactly makes good outreach and what doesn't make good outreach. And that's exactly what I want to go over in a little bit. And so I guess at the outset, when I compared myself to Joey, Earthling Ed, and Hudson Talo, I felt myself that I was not good at outreach, because when I saw their videos, I thought that whatever they say, they get this reaction and then they're good. No matter who they speak to, they can probably convince that person to go vegan. And I guess that was the wrong approach. So my mentality, to summarize it, was if I cannot make people vegan, I have failed. And that was probably the hardest thing to let go of. If I let go of that mentality, what do I put my standard of good outreach against then? And so this was pretty much the dilemma I faced. I was thinking, okay, if I'm not going to think that a good outreach makes people vegan, then what is good outreach? And I didn't have anything to hold that standard to. And so, yeah, I thought to myself, again, from these great people, that a good outreacher can convince people to go vegan. And this is the thing that I had to get out of my mind, because this actually came up in a conversation with Hudson Talo, where he told me even he felt like there were some people that he would talk to, know all the right things to say, and he wouldn't get to them. And then he actually approached Earthling Ed and he said, Ed, if you talk to this person, I know that you can get to him because you're so amazing. And what Ed said to him is actually something that I struggle with as well to accept, is that Earthling Ed's family is not vegan, even though he is as amazing at convincing people of things. And he's had so many conversations with his family. He hasn't been able to change their mind. And so it brings me to the concept of actually thinking about how we perceive people change their minds. It's not that I convince you to change your mind. It's that once you've decided that you want to change your mind on a subconscious level, you will go out and seek the person who will help you. There's a great quote that says, once the student is ready, the master will appear. And that's kind of exactly how that behavior change works in us, is that we don't go out and seek a master until we ourselves are ready to take that learning into account. And so again, this perspective shift in what I'm trying to do with outreach, that means that a good outreacher helps people convince themselves. I can't take someone from going to a scale of 0 to 100 on either not being vegan and being vegan. Just by me talking to them, I can't take them all the way up on that scale. They have to be at a certain point. They have to have some sort of vested interest in themselves. And usually that comes from their inherent values that they have. And so the perspective shift, not only in how I looked at animals had changed, but also my perspective shift in how I advocated and who I was looking for to share this message with. And so it taught me about what skill as an outreacher really is. And this is what I found. Your skill as an outreacher is not determined by how many people you have made vegan. Your skill is determined by your ability to find the right people and help them empathize with animals. And the reason why this is because, again, it goes back to our behavior change based on our values. If people can't establish any amount of empathy with animals, whatever you say to them about the suffering of them won't make any difference. And when I talk about empathy, I guess I have to add a little bit of nuance in here. It's about just the ability to put yourself in their shoes. I don't have to love every animal to have empathy for them. I don't have to care about necessarily their well-being or anything like that. I just actually have to think almost selfishly. I have to think that if this was being done to me, I would not want it to be done. I would want someone to protect me. And so, yeah, that's what I found. And exactly with this framework of first the E.A.R framework and then the reverse psychology, I found that these two frameworks act as a filter to find the people who can empathize with animals. And I guess that's the biggest takeaway that I want to prime you guys for, because I don't want you to think that just because you use these two frameworks, there's something magical about it and it's going to make everyone you meet open to this whole idea. What it will help you with is to find the people who are ready and help them change their own mind. Those are the biggest things that you will find from using these frameworks. And so, yeah, basically, this presentation I wanted to do was just to prime you on those two ideas so that when I play the video, you understand exactly where I'm coming from with how I show the framework. And so, yeah, in just a second, I'm going to play the video for you. It's about 30 minutes long, and I've put so much time and effort into refining it so that I didn't have to just do it freehand and so that it can last a long time. I just want to say that We The Free actually sponsored my production of that. And so I'm really grateful to them for helping me out with developing the framework and getting all the production right. And again, I'm really grateful to Animal Activism Mentorship for helping me share this with you guys, because my platform isn't that big. So I have to rely on others to help me with that. So I'm really grateful that you guys are here. So I'm going to set that up for you. We'll maybe just take like a 5-minute break for you guys to get settled, because this is something that you'll want to take notes on. And one thing that I'd really love for you guys is to not take notes on everything, just take what really resonates with you. And then once that happens, I want you to share the things that resonate with you. In my last workshop, we had a lot of people who resonated with the same things, and it really helped them understand it better and see what other things that other people find. And we just see the variation, and it helps me figure out, okay, what are like the best parts of this framework? So yeah, I guess I'll just start a little timer. We'll take just a short 5-minute break. So get some water, get out your notes if you need to as well. And then we'll get back to it in a sec. So I'm gonna hang out here. And if there's anything you guys find in the chat that you want to share, I'll just answer those questions in the meantime.
Really great so far, Michael. I'm already intrigued. I've already seen your video and I love it, and I can't wait to see it again.
Thank you.
Makes a difference to see the outreach itself. Did you tell folks that you're in New Zealand? Did you mention that you're there?
Oh no, I didn't actually. Yeah.
I forgot to
I'm in,
mention it.
yeah. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. I'm actually moving down to New Plymouth, which is quite a bit of a smaller town around there. I'm moving my parents down there to work on a new project. So yeah.
Okay, so Trey wants to know, how long did it take for you to formulate this way of thinking?
How long did it take for me to formulate? I guess I started outreach in 2020. I think it took me 6 months for me to find my own kind of groove as to the questions that I liked. And then from there, from 2020 until 2021, so maybe like 6 months, I got the base formula of this framework. And since then, I've been very iteratively optimizing it over and over to try and optimize it so that it works in a more broad sense than anything else. Because I think with a lot of guides, they are very specific, which is good, but I want to always teach people why I do what I do so that they can go forth and optimize on what they found from me. So I don't want to look like some sort of guru who you don't understand why he asked these like specific questions. I want everyone to take away what I've shown them, and I want them to optimize for themselves. So that's exactly why I teach the theory of why I asked the specific questions, because as soon as you learn why I asked what I asked, and especially if you don't like how I worded something, or if you don't like the question that's asked, you understand what's the reason behind this question, and you can be like, okay, this is the way that I want to word it, and it still achieves that goal, but it just makes more sense for me, and it's more fulfilling for me to ask it in this way. And that's exactly what I found with the reverse psychology approach, especially because I guess I developed that again for my personality. It's not that I don't like the, I guess, vanilla version of outreach conversations, but I think it just fits more within my personality to do the like trolling style reverse psychology thing. I just get so much more out of it.
We had a question. What was the name of the book that inspired you?
It was The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe by Dr. Stephen Novella, I believe. So it's just a book that literally teaches you all of the logical fallacies that exist and examples of them, and also heuristic biases. A book that I read that really develops on that is Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That's one of the best psychology books I've read. It's very dense, but it teaches you, I guess, this basic principle of fast and slow thinking. Basically, fast thinking is very reactive, almost primal, and slow thinking is when you think of higher order concepts. And if you already know that book, essentially what we're doing with these conversations is that we're trying to get people onto higher level thinking instead of just very responsive and reactive thinking and communication.
Sounds good.
Cool.
I don't think we have any other questions, so if you want to do the video.
Yeah, I think it's
For now.
that's just been about 5 minutes, so we're right on there. So let me just set that up.
I don't think we have any other questions, so if you want to do the video.
Yeah, I think it's
For now.
that's just been about 5
We got
minutes.
into outreach with the assumption that we
Right on
have
there.
to debate
You're muted.
people to tell you the things you want to say to them. On top of all of that, I've created a wiki page in Notion, which contains a bunch of resources to help you after this video. Inside it, you will find further in-depth explanations on the E.A.R framework, equipment checklists for each style of outreach with links to what I use and recommend, a template for you to add your own custom questions to my framework, a 4-minute video refresher on the key questions you can watch before events to see how these questions are used in a more natural setting, and what I'm most proud of is the key questions cheat sheet. It will show you how to deal with every kind of response you will get from the questions you ask. And I've adapted a simplified version of this to save to your phone when you go to these outreach events. Out of all the outreach conversations I've seen, from the greatest themselves and from my own experience, I noticed an elusive theme that carried out in each successful discussion that they had, but I couldn't see it as clearly as I do now. 3 years ago, I had copied the exact same questions or statements my favorite outreachers used, and expected to get similar results. But my conversations were terrible compared to theirs. I watched my own outreach recordings and compared them to the reference videos to make sure I was saying the right things, and I was. So it didn't make any sense. The most frustrating thing is that I copied the things that they said perfectly, but my conversations didn't go the same way. I knew there was a crucial piece I was missing, so I sat down and watched these videos and compared them and actually wrote out each line that they asked and how they sequenced them, and compared them across all of these videos. And that's when the patterns started aligning. While these outreaches were kind enough to show and tell you what they would say, they never mentioned the crucial element that contributed to their success. When they would say something mattered even more than what they would say. That's when I broke the surface of that underlying theme that I noticed from the start. It wasn't the specific questions that these outreaches used that made people change. It was about asking those questions at a specific phase of the conversation. I experimented for 6 months using different questions to purposefully elicit different responses. This is where I discovered the 3 phases of the framework. I kept the questions that drove the conversation forward and got rid of all of the waste and drafted the E.A.R framework that I'm teaching you today. I got to the point where I could ask a specific set of questions in a sequence and I would be able to predict exactly how the other person would respond in each scenario. This meant that I was less stressed about what the other person might say and became more confident in my conversations. My conversations went from 30 minutes of waffling, producing no change of heart, to 10-minute life-changing conversations, and sometimes animal life-saving ones. In this guide, I will teach you the secret 3-phase structure that these legends use, but don't tell you about. And while utilizing this reverse psychology approach, I'll teach you the key questions that you need to drive the conversation forward through each phase. On top of that, I will show you the goals of each key question we use so you know exactly how, when, and what to say in every interaction. With practice in this method, you'll be able to predict the responses that you'll get to the questions and reply accordingly. Before I learned and applied the structure, these were the symptoms that I had from my bad conversations. I was filled with anxiety because I always prepared for the worst, and I only thought about how to counter-argue with people. If the person said they were an animal lover, I quickly jumped into resolutions, but then I would end up in looping arguments. I felt like I had failed people who were ready to talk, but I didn't know how to lead a conversation. I spent 30 minutes to an hour in heated debates with people who I didn't know how to close out conversations with. And I didn't realize that they weren't the right people to talk to in the first place. And ultimately, I had a few bad experiences like this that almost led to me giving up completely. By the end of this course, you will understand the fundamentals of why reverse psychology is so effective and how to make every conversation you have fulfilling, succinct, and structured. Let's look at the different ways that you can set up a reverse psychology event and run through the pros and cons of each of them. The first is a simple sign. It can be lonely, but there is no need to rely on others. It's really easy to set up and it's low cost. You could try a debate table as well. People are more reluctant to sit down and talk, and it does have a medium cost, but the quality of conversations is much better, and you can set up solo with the right equipment. And my favorite is the TV stand and sign. It does have a high setup cost, and it needs 2 to 3 people to set up, but it has huge impact potential, especially when using 2 stands and a big team. It attracts the most attention of all of these styles, and you have footage to reference what you're talking about. Plus, no one has to hold signs or TVs. You can just focus on outreach. There are 2 ways that you can approach this reverse psychology method. My style is the devil's advocate approach. For my personality type, this is the most fun approach to outreach. By following the E.A.R framework, I can easily act like I'm a person who legitimately thinks animals deserve to be abused and make other people do all the outreach work for me.
Can animals take people to space? Don't think so.
Feel any sympathy for them, but if that was a human in that situation,
Yeah,
there would
definitely.
be so many punishments.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
But I have to put a disclaimer. This approach is only suited to people who have a similar personality type to me and who can handle that kind of confrontation. But to me, the end result is the most rewarding when I have people do a complete 180 on their opinion of me and they end up making a positive change. I won't be teaching the devil's advocate approach specifically because I left that in the guide in the Notion wiki page. The next approach is what this guide is focusing on, and everyone can do it. It's the conversation starter approach. This will be the most common use case for this reverse psychology method. Asking someone whether or not they agree with the sign is the easiest way to start any of the outreach conversations you'll have with this event. You base your conversation on 2 people acknowledging this truth of society and figuring out what to do about it. However, getting the best results won't happen if you just use the same sign as me. Now I'll teach you the E.A.R framework to apply this method, and I'll help you understand the fundamentals of why this is so effective. Within the framework, the 3 phases are the establishment, argument, and resolution. The colors resemble a traffic light, but with a swapped order, because the rules for how we drive the conversation are similar. Treat it like a traffic light. In the establishment, first we start slow and build on their empathy. Then in the argument, we stop when we need to address things holding the other person back. And finally, in the resolution, we go when they understand that their values and actions are misaligned and they need guidance. We're going to deep dive through each phase linearly, and this is how it will work. We will overview the phase, starting with establishment. We will discuss the goals of the phase. We will deep dive into each goal individually, giving insights. We'll cover the questions linked to the goal. I'll show an outreach example of that question. Then I'll break down what the question is achieving and move on to the next goal or question and repeat for each phase. The framework has a really easy structure in which each phase has a couple of goals and each goal has a question linked to it. Let's start with the most important phase of the whole framework, which is the establishment. To summarize it in one sentence, it's about confirming the person has empathy for animals, is against animal abuse, and understands ethical veganism. Before we get into talking to someone about becoming vegan during outreach, we want to meet certain goals to build the base of an effective conversation. Treat the establishment stage as a filter that only lets you have meaningful conversations with people who are open to the animal rights message. If they answer these questions honestly, you will know that you can continue to have a productive conversation. Here are some important notes on the establishment phase. Try your best not to use the word vegan right at the start, unless the other person mentions it. This is crucial to the reverse psychology method. Please don't misunderstand me. I have no problem with the word at all, but it will get in the way of the conversation because of what people think the word means. The common conception that we should expect from people is that vegans are the ones who eat vegetables because that's what vegans do. We need to make it clear that being vegan is about being against animal abuse and exploitation. I've implemented key questions later in the phase that will help them come to this conclusion without you having to tell them. Another note is that the establishment should make up 80% of your conversation. The key questions I teach are specifically to progress the conversation. If you look deep into the responses in the key questions section on the wiki page, you will see all of the different extra questions that I suggest you use to build on the person's empathy. If you only follow the key questions in the establishment phase, you will not get the results that you're looking for. Remember, each key question is focused on progressing the conversation forward. This is fine for the argument and the resolution stage, but for the establishment stage, you need to spend 80% of your time drawing out the other person's sense of empathy for animals and helping them bridge the gap between their empathy for animals who traditionally have rights and for animals who are farmed. If you're a complete beginner and feel like this is a bit overwhelming, that's okay. Think of this whole structure as a vertical stack of blocks creating a tower. Each question is a block, and a good conversation looks like this. Each block represents a key question. The base is built wide with the establishment and holds the argument in place. Then we use the resolution to help build a higher level of consciousness. You can learn the structure one question or one block at a time and slowly chain the blocks together. With that said, let's go over the goals of the establishment. There are 3 main goals and they function to establish that animal abuse is wrong and the person is against it, to ensure the person is aware that they cannot demand animal abuse and be against it at the same time, and to explain why animal rights needs veganism. For goal number 1, animal abuse is wrong and the person is against it, the first thing we need to do is make sure we are choosing the right person to talk to. You can judge someone's level of empathy they have for animals by their answer to these questions, and we need to build that up as much as possible. The most important part about the establishment is to use what you have learned to better understand the person, but also remind them of the values that they have for animals already. At the start of the conversation, introduce yourself with a smile and a big hello, and then ask them this first question. Do you agree with the sign, which says animals deserve to be abused?
What do you think about this sign in general, though? Animals deserve to be abused. Would you agree or disagree? It's quite easy to disagree with that one, eh?
With this question, we want to ensure that we are talking to someone who is against animal abuse before we invest more time with them. This is usually a quick no that they don't agree with the sign, but they may elaborate on their statement, so take some time to listen to this. In the rare case that they say that they do think animals deserve to be abused, this is your first big sign that they are the person that you don't want to talk to. The second question linked to this goal is, what is it about animals that makes you feel like they shouldn't be abused?
What is it about animals, though, that makes you feel like they shouldn't be abused?
Well, they're so innocent, aren't they? You know, interesting.
The most innocent creatures, eh? Yeah.
This question is about understanding the different types of intrinsic values that person has for animals and using it for future reference. The next question is, how does it make you feel when you're watching animals suffering?
How does it make you feel when you're watching animals going through that? It's not nice, eh? Yeah.
Our purpose with this is to figure out where their empathy comes from. They will say things like animals are so innocent, or they might tell you about an experience they had of witnessing an animal in pain. Before moving on to the next goal, keep asking them questions about these experiences. The more time you spend here, the easier the rest of the conversation will be. When you first start using this method, just try and memorize these 3 questions together and then forget about everything else. And then you can start to learn each other question in chains like this. Moving on to goal number 2, which is to ensure that they are aware that they cannot demand animal abuse and be against it at the same time. Having empathy for animals is not enough. We need to verbally confirm with them that they are against animal abuse. If we can get them to confirm this, it's a good sign that the person is the right kind of person that we want to talk to. Most people will say that they are, but their actions won't align with those beliefs, but we'll build on that later. What I mean by empathy is not whether they love animals, but whether they can consider the victim's perspective. They may not love animals like chickens, but they can understand that putting them through abuse or exploitation is morally wrong. First question for this goal is, what industries do you think are abusing animals?
What industries do you think are abusing animals in these situations?
Pigs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sausages.
Yeah. Biggest culprits would be meat, dairy, and egg industries, eh?
Focusing on the Socratic method, we want them to come up with the conclusions that we would like to tell them. We want them to understand for themselves that the industries that provide animal products are the exact industries that are abusing and exploiting animals. This question is leading into the relationship between buying animal products and supporting animal abuse. You will see how important this question is in the setup for the next goal. The next key question is, would you say that you're against animal abuse?
Would you say that you're against animal abuse? Yeah? How strongly do you feel about that? Like maybe on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, 10. 10.
10. Wow, that's very strong.
Directly linked to the goal, we're trying to establish if the person is against animal abuse. If they were to say that they could care less, I would not spend any more time investing in this conversation. The next key question should come immediately after. Do you think you could truly be against animal abuse while paying those industries to abuse animals?
But yeah, the thing is, do you think that you could truly be against animal abuse while paying people to abuse animals for you for animal products?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, probably not a.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because it's easy to say that you're against something, but your actions determine your values, eh?
This is a question that I see outreachers wanting to state themselves instead of asking the other person what they think. If you followed the questions beforehand and the person is the right fit for the conversation, it's very likely that they will confirm these questions with you. Even if you did state a lot of true things, people are more likely to believe what they tell you instead of what you tell them. With their response, we complete goal number 2 and then move on to goal number 3, to explain why animal rights needs veganism. This is where you can finally introduce the idea of veganism and clarify its meaning. So far, we have established that they have empathy for animals and they are against animal abuse. Now we naturally come to a discussion on being vegan. The first question, which is set up by the previous questions, is, since you know which industries are abusing animals, and you've told me that you're against animal abuse, what do you think you could do if you no longer want to support animal abuse?
You know which industries are abusing animals, and you've told me that you're against animal abuse. So what do you think you can do if you don't want to support animal abuse anymore?
Well, yeah. Don't eat meat.
Yeah, to boycott the industries, eh? Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
This is my favorite question within the whole sequence, because all of these questions in tandem build up on one another. You wouldn't expect people to come to the conclusion of veganism, so that's why the next key question immediately follows that up. Can you think of any lifestyle that aligns with people not using animal products for the sole reason of avoiding animal abuse?
Can you think of any lifestyle that aligns with that philosophy of avoiding animal products for the sole reason of avoiding wanting to support animal abuse?
Yeah, because veganism.
Veganism, yeah, straight up.
Usually I'll get responses like don't eat meat or be vegetarian. The good thing about this question is that we can predict the responses that we will get and be more confident in what we're going to say in return. If they don't really get it or need a little help, be patient. This is our chance to guide them through that process and complete that goal that we're trying to achieve. Once we both come to a conclusion of veganism, we finish the last goal of the establishment stage. Now that we have completed these goals and landed at the conclusion of veganism, now we move on to the argument stage. Every single establishment goal must be met before the argument. This doesn't mean each question needs to be asked, but each goal needs to be achieved. If the other person tries to start the argument earlier, this means that you just let them have their say, wait for them to finish, and then carry on back to the establishment stage that you were at and progress from there. One sentence to summarize this stage is to confirm the person knows if they were the victim, they would want someone to go vegan for them. This stage is to address any arguments the other person has, but it is not a space for us to argue with the person. The more time you spend in the establishment stage, the less time you will spend in the argument. This is because if you build up that person's empathy for animals so high, it will be really hard for them to turn their back on all the things that they said in any kind of argument. If you haven't built on their empathy, it will be really easy for them to bring up a lot of arguments. The reason why this section is so short in the guide is that if your goal is to be a great debater, this guide isn't for you. I love outreach, but I hate arguing, and that's the whole reason why I created this in the first place. The framework and the reverse psychology approach combined are optimized to avoid draining arguments and focus more on the animals. Goal 1 is to ask the person specifically what's stopping them from being vegan. The more time you spend on the establishment phase and building upon why that person is against animal abuse, the less likely they will come up with any of the stereotyped arguments that we've heard online. Again, our objective is not to argue. Our objective is to address the arguments the other person has and relate it to what they were saying in the previous phase about how they had values for animals and were against animal abuse. The question linked to this goal is, what is stopping you from living a lifestyle that doesn't abuse animals and adopting a vegan lifestyle?
So what do you think's the biggest thing stopping you from living a lifestyle that doesn't abuse animals and adopting a vegan lifestyle?
Well, just selfish tastes, really, I guess.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I like cheese.
Yeah, and I was the same. Thank you for being honest.
All we want from the person is honesty. We don't necessarily want to jump in and fix that person's barrier to being vegan, but usually we move on to the question in goal number 2. Goal number 2 is to dismiss arguments by putting them in the victim's position. Our goal is to redirect the conversation towards empathy instead of logic, not to argue. This is why I mentioned in the previous goal that we're not trying to fix them after they tell us the barrier that they have. We use logic to conclude with empathy. We do not use logic to conclude with logic. Saying something like, you wouldn't say that for X animal, so why would you say that for farmed animals? This is trying to use logic to come to a conclusion of logic. They shouldn't eat farmed animals because there is no difference. This is logical, yes, but the person does not understand it like this. Instead, ask them, do you think that consistently for all animals? With their reply, they will point out the difference between animals. Instead of immediately debunking the difference, find out where their empathy comes from. See if you can bridge the gap of empathy between the two animals. This is what I mean by using logic to conclude with empathy. I have more examples of this in the key question section in the Notion wiki document. The question linked to this goal is, what would you want someone to do if you were in the animal's position?
A really great question for you would be, what would you want someone like yourself to do for you if you were one of these animals? Would you want someone like yourself to change very slowly? You would want someone like it. Yeah, because you'd be suffering so horribly, right? Yeah.
In Simon Sinek's seminal book, Start With Why, on how values affect our decisions, he emphasizes focusing on why instead of what. Previously in the conversation, someone might have mentioned the barrier of not knowing what to eat. I see so many outreachers seeing that response and jumping in and telling the person what to eat and expecting them to change, but they don't. It's because we are not logical beings, we are biological. Our values drive our emotions, which drive our actions. In summary, you do not need to dispel every single argument to complete this stage. They may leave the conversation having no idea what to eat next, but the values that you've brought out of them will drive their emotion of empathy to find a way. If you can get the person to think about the animals before their own barriers, then you can complete the argument phase and move on to the resolution phase. You must complete both phases entirely before moving on to the resolution stage. Again, not specifically the questions you ask, but more importantly the goals of each of these phases. One sentence to summarize this stage is to explain the clear moral obligation of veganism. Our progression so far is that we have confirmed the person has empathy for animals, is against animal abuse, and they understand ethical veganism. They know if that they were the victim, they would want someone to go vegan for them. Now, we show them the actions of someone who holds the same values as them. Goal 1 is to explain ethical veganism and its distinction between mainstream veganism. Veganism means so many different things in mainstream media. We should assume the person misunderstands what it's really about and ask them what they think about it and then correct them from there. We do this using extra questions for them to think about. The linked question to this goal is, what do you think is the best benefit of being vegan?
Yeah, would you like to know the best benefit about a vegan lifestyle?
Well, probably health-wise.
You think so?
I do, actually, yeah.
Do you think that you could be unhealthy as a vegan if you ate vegan junk food all the time though?
Oh, I guess so.
Yeah, veganism isn't really much to do with health of the environment.
Yeah.
It's ethical stance.
Okay.
Yeah.
With this question, we already assume the person is going to give the wrong answer. This is why we ask them further questions to lead to that conclusion like I did in the example. The goal is complete when they understand ethical veganism. Goal 2 is to ask them if they will continue to abuse animals. The goal of this is not to make them say that they will go vegan. It is a space for them to reflect on what they will do based on the values that they have told us they have. The linked question is, what will you do moving on from this conversation?
So what do you think you're going to do moving on from this conversation?
Oh, I don't know. I'd like to sort of look into, sort of veganism.
Okay.
Yeah.
If they say that they're going to make a change, that's great. But if they say that they won't, then it's okay. If you've done a good job of the establishment and given them the space to explain how passionate they are about animals, they will remember how they responded to this question. If they say that they really care and they are going to take action, that is a positive affirmation for them, but the opposite is also true. Your goal is not to make people vegan, but give people the tools and the insights to help them make the decision themselves. The goal is complete when they can honestly tell you what they will do. Goal 3 is to make veganism a clear moral obligation. This is a closing statement, and it can be used at any time you feel like the conversation is no longer productive. The linked statement is, Remember that until the day that you do go vegan, animals will be abused because of your choice. Please think about what your actions say about your values.
But yeah, just remember that until the day that it is you do go vegan, that animals will be abused because of your choice. So just think about what your actions say about your values. But thank you very much for the conversation.
They will obviously understand that the values they have told you should align with their actions, but we're not expecting them to do this immediately after. Simply by stating this, you're completing the goal. Goal 4 is to give them resources that will help them. Without actionable steps, the person is likely to forget about the experience they had with you. Use what you have learned about them to give personal recommendations that you think that would benefit them. The linked question is, can I give you some resources to help you? Or you can state that you're going to give them some resources to help them.
I'm going to leave you with this card. It will have pretty much like any resource that you'll need at the back to make that decision. And also, sorry, I do record these conversations and I put them on my YouTube channel. I just wanted to let you know because you've been so honest with me. I really appreciate it, and you've been really friendly, and I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much, man. Cheers, you too.
Most of outreach is sharing insights and information to help people make better decisions by themselves. The end of this conversation is an opportunity to help them with more actionable resources that will help them with their development on this path. Remember to thank them for their time, because we should truly show gratitude to the people who stop and engage with us honestly, because most other people are walking by paying no attention. With these goals complete, you've done an amazing job as an outreacher. This may not mean the other person will go vegan on the spot, but they have everything that they need to be the person that they say they are. A special thank you to We the Three for sponsoring my production of this workshop. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have been able to put this much time into distilling all of the knowledge that I have and creating these resources for you. Since you understand the goals of what we are trying to achieve with each of these questions, now you can just focus on remembering the questions themselves. I've created a 4-minute refresher guide containing my outreach examples of the questions for you to watch just before events. Everything else you would possibly need to start these events is on the Notion wiki page linked below. Thank you for supporting and fighting for the victim's perspective.
Thank you guys for bearing with me on the technical stuff. I guess that is a lesson for me, and also I'm going to turn it into a lesson for how your outreach goes, because the thing is, if you try this method, you're going to screw it up no matter what. And the thing is that I've found with everything that I've screwed up in my life is that the pain that you feel from what goes wrong is going to instantly direct you into what you need to do for next time. And so, especially with this live stream, now that I've made those mistakes, I know exactly what to do for next time. And the same will be for when you have these conversations. But it's important to remember that you don't have this massive weight on your shoulders, that if you do happen to make a mistake with how you advocate, that is not going to be the reason why that person didn't go vegan. Essentially, again, it's up to them. And yeah, so I guess with that said, we'll move on to the Q&A.
Fantastic, Michael. Really great. I love it. I love it. You covered everything. I almost don't have any questions. No, we have questions. Really, really great. Great. Formula, but not a formula. Structure, but lots of room for creativity and style and all that good stuff. So we are going to questions. Questions from you on YouTube, you YouTubers. What questions do you have for Michael now? Getting some good feedback. People definitely like the video. I think they're processing and digesting all of it. And so folks can put your questions in the chat. I mean, I guess, again, maybe, maybe you sort of answered this, but, when people go off on really far off sort of tangents.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're saying you do the setup questions, the establishing questions with empathy that should hopefully avoid that. They're not the right person, as you said, but we've had those experiences where people just go off on politics, or and obviously you want to bring it back to the animals. What do you do and say with that?
Yeah, I actually had, I am mentoring a friend of mine who reached out about the whole framework, and she had this exact question for me. It's like, what do you do when you have these people who just go on these tangents? Basically, again, from that level of thinking of these frameworks as a filter, what you start to understand, especially from listening, is that people will have the conversation that they want to have with you. So if they go on those tangents of politics or environments, it will, as you listen and you just give them space to talk, it will become quite prevalent that these people just want to kind of boost their ego. And I found that, again, with the filtering, in that establishment stage and this thing is happening, I will just stop having the conversation with them. I will just keep silent, let them exhaust all of their dialogue, because I guess the mistake that I made is that I would instantly go in and try to bring the conversation back to the animals. But essentially that stops letting them have their say. And now all that they're thinking is that I want to say this thing about the environment. I want to say this thing about the politics of this. And so they're not actually listening to you anymore. They're almost doing the same thing that you're doing, which is, I need to make my point. I need to make them understand what I understand. And so what I found from especially giving space for people to talk, and that's essentially just keeping quiet and giving them eye contact and things like that, is that essentially you'll just filter out those people. Yes, you might get taken on a very long tangent, but let's say they are open to the animal rights message, but they just wanted to get that off their chest. If that happens, I will let them have that tangent. Maybe it will go on for like 5 minutes and I'll just keep quiet. And once that's over, when I try to bring back the conversation to animal rights again, if they go on another tangent, that may be a time for me to interrupt and say, I really understand what you're saying, but I want to focus on the ethics of this. And depending on how they react to that is exactly how you gauge whether this is someone you want to talk to or someone that you don't want to talk to. So the most simple thing is just listening to them, but the most simple thing is usually the most hardest thing.
Yeah, it does remind me of, again, the basics of basic communication skills. The basics of active listening are always important as your foundation, just reflecting back, or just, aha, I hear you, validating, that, but that may only go to so far as well, of course. But there's a question here. How do you prevent burnout? Outreach can be so stressful, especially when people are rude or unwilling to listen or change.
Totally. Man, burnout's something that I'm actually going through or understanding. So I actually stopped doing like active outreach, I think 4 months ago. And exactly the reason for that was because I was tired of arguing with people, basically. Even though I've developed this framework to try and stop that as much as possible, I found that trying to make YouTube content around it specifically made it so that I was catering to the algorithm of YouTube where they like that kind of stuff instead of catering to what I like to do. And so I actually found the thing that I like to do most is teaching people what I've learned. So I guess me like doing these workshops is a way for me to deal with burnout. And so what I think is that I used to see posts where it's like, we all need to do outreach, we all need to do activism, we all need to be out there. But I imagine if we got everyone, let's say we have these vegans who are kind of on the fence about activism, and then we invited them to our outreach events and they were there and you could really tell that they were really disengaged with what they were doing. The people who would interact with them would feel that as well. They would think that these people don't actually believe in the things that they say. And so what I found is that especially as we celebrate things like diversity, Diversity is one of the best features of the human experience because we will naturally find things that we are more attuned to. And as we do that, as we discover more things about ourselves, we find these things that we're passionate about, what we're not passionate about, and we all go into our little different communities. And so I guess one of those things would be like the community of the vegans who only just talk about food, or the vegans who are just so passionate about activism. And what I found is that we can just focus on the thing that makes us feel the best about what we do. And so I think dealing with burnout, if you are facing burnout, it means that this is a thing that you're not actually passionate about. You're probably just trying to convince yourself that you are. Because if I think of someone like Joey Carbstrong, there are probably less than like 0.1% of the population that could do something like he does. The only reason why he's done it for so long is because it's so in tune with his unique personality that if you try to replicate it, like I tried to do, you'll find yourself burning out. Whereas for him, he feels like if he doesn't do that, he actually feels like a reverse burnout. I asked him this question in the live stream. I was like, when's the last time you've taken a holiday? And he told me, if I take a holiday, it just burns in my mind that I'm not doing this thing. So what I found is that, yeah, burnout is literally a symptom that you're not doing the thing that aligns with your core values, basically. And so I found that for me, what really aligns with me is helping people and inspiring people to do this kind of work. I do enjoy like having the conversations by myself, but that can only go so far. For me, I found out I really enjoy just teaching, inspiring people and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, I still feel a bit of guilt because it's like, oh, you're not actually going out there yourself. You're relying on other people to do that for you. But if I continued to force myself to go out there all the time and do it, I feel like I would build a resentment for that thing. And that's something that I definitely want to avoid at all costs. So yeah, burnout's difficult.
I love that. I like how you're saying, you know, burnout is a symptom of not quite being in alignment with your particular skills and talents and passions. And one of the comments with that is, so people should work to find the kind of activism that is sustainable for them, basically, you know, like over the long term. And it's almost like your body will tell you, and your heart will tell you, and it's making me think of that flow state. Like sometimes when I'm talking to people, it's flowing. I'm in that flow state. That's how I know I'm speaking my original way, my unique way. And if it feels forced, or I have someone else's voice in my head in the back, oh no, you should say this, you should say this, then I'm just sort of not matched up with that, you know. So that's an important, really important, you know, psychological point that you're making there. And so we're still open for another question or two if folks have them. But I was wondering, I was really struck by, look like a mother and daughter, the one that you were talking to, right? I'm assuming the older woman and the younger girl, mother, daughter. And you seem to really make an impact there. Any afterthoughts? I mean, I know we're not like being attached to the goal, right? But do you think you reached the mother? It certainly seemed like you did.
I think she reached herself in a way. What my display did, especially with the animals deserve to be abused thing, and one of the most profound things that I found from her is that she just so candidly admitted that she's totally against animal abuse, but she just loves cheese. And I think that is something that people find very hard to just very candidly say. And so when I think about, again, behavior change, it's not the fact that just having that conversation would be like, oh, my values and my actions are misaligned, I need to switch. after we had that conversation, I haven't spoken to her. I don't take her contact details. But again, when I think about the macro of behavior change, there's going to be some moment in her life where she, I guess, experiences the pain of having that disassociation between your values matching up with your actions. And she'll probably remember that. And I found that, I guess, in my life as well. But I couldn't, I guess, code it to a specific moment. Just like I said, with being like actually in a slaughterhouse, it had no effect on me until I learned about things like logical fallacies and all these things. So I guess a concept that people talk about a lot is planting seeds. And I guess one misconception is that we think all of these seeds will sprout. But sometimes people would outreachers sometimes just want to throw seeds at people where there's no soil, you know? So it's up to the person whether they take that seed and they put it into fertile soil. But for us, I guess, what I found, especially going back to our previous point, is that find the seeds that you love to cultivate. And if you find the seeds that you love to cultivate, you'll just naturally want to spread them as much as you can. And again, yeah, that ties to that feeling of burnout and yeah, approaching that whole aspect of the conversation.
I love that because it's really empowering people and giving people more credit than maybe we would. You know, like somewhere deep inside of them, they know the right thing. Of course, they have a conscience, and we're sort of trying to pierce through and speak directly to that. And then the rest of it is up to them. I don't want to use a speciesist like term, like you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know, there must be something better than that. But totally, I get that. Trey says there has to be fertile soil. You can't just throw seeds and expect them to work. That's right. Soil has to be fertile. Maybe it has to be watered, it has to be fed, it has to be given sunshine over time. It doesn't happen, things don't grow overnight. So it's a really, really great analogy. And I love that you said, when you went over your presentation, I'm thinking, I need a cheat sheet, right? I was like, I need these questions. Like, I almost like want to have like an index card when I'm there, but you can't do that. But I love that you have this 4-minute, you said you have like a 4-minute refresher that you can watch quickly that summarizes, I assume, and has the questions. How'd you come up with that idea? That was a really
that's
good.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I have to address is that all the links that I talked about within the video, I guess we'll put on the pinned comment of this. So I have a wiki page that goes over the whole course, I guess, in like a written form. And then I have the refresher guide, and I also have that cheat sheet that you mentioned. That's like a PDF that you can have on your phone. That's one page. And so, yeah, I guess the way that I came up with that is that that's exactly what I needed. So I would watch, I think one of the first outreach guides that I watched was from AV, 2 hours long or 1.5 hours long. And whenever I went to outreach, I was like, how the hell am I going to remember all of these questions from this long of a video? And so I actually reached out to Paul and I created a 4-minute refresher on his questions. But unfortunately he didn't want to use it. I think he turned it into a 20-minute thing. So I went ahead and did it for my own ones. And that's where the 4-minute refresher came in. So as soon as I found parking in the car park where I did my outreach conversations, I'd literally just play the video and it'd be like, okay. I'm thinking in my head, trying to remember as I say it in the video, trying to think of it at the same time that I say it. And I guess, yeah, it just helped me memorize as I was like, I think this question's coming up, and then it did come up. I'm like, okay, sweet, I got it. So yeah.
And what's the name of your wiki page again?
I don't necessarily have a name for it, but again, I'll link it and we can put it in the pinned comments on this video. Yeah.
Okay.
But also on my channel where I have the video that I showed in the live stream, all of those links are there as well.
Okay. All right, so they're going to be easy for everybody to find because folks are asking for it. So that's
Yeah.
a really good thing, of course.
Yeah.
And any other questions? Let's just give another minute or so, and otherwise we'll wrap up shortly.
Mm.
What time is it there in New Zealand?
1:34.
Oh, it's only,
That's not too bad.
well, it's a little later here, but
Oh, I
we're the
see.
day before you. So
Yeah.
any
I'm ahead. I'm way ahead.
any other questions? Any other questions going once and twice? Michael, any final words then? I always ask our guests to leave us on a note of hope, please.
Note of hope. Wow.
Or anything you'd like to say.
I think, yeah, just again, the way to not go through burnout is to find the thing that you truly resonate with. And as soon as you feel that feeling, you'll know the difference between having a hard challenge and finding it difficult, and the difference between, I feel like burnout, I can't do this. Something at a deeper level is telling me that this isn't the path that I should go towards. And I think that, yeah, there's something truly within us that guides us towards these different paths. And if you just listen to that, you'll know exactly where to go.
Excellent. Brilliant. Everybody likes that. That was a great tip. Listen to your own inner wisdom. Listen to your intuition. Follow what you naturally gravitate toward. So if you like this presentation, please leave so in the chat. We would love your praise for Michael and your feedback. So thank you, Michael, so much. And hang on, folks. Let me just make a few closing announcements before we wrap up completely. Again, thank you for joining us. We do have regular workshops. So our upcoming workshops on November 2nd, we have How Animals Grieve with Barbara J. King. On November 10th, we have plant-based diets for companion animals. On November 16th, we have the plant-based treaty. On November 30th, we have media relations and strategic marketing for your animal rights campaign or cause. And on December 12th, we have effective communication skills for activists, right? With one of our mentors. And please check out our previous workshops, all archived right here on our YouTube channel. And while you're here, please subscribe. Please consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. Right, that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Michael, for your time and wisdom. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for the animals. Again, if you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or to get involved with AAM, please reach out to us. If you'd like to be on our email newsletter list, drop your email. And that's it. Until next time, thanks everyone. Stay strong and live vegan.